The audience held its breath as a boy named Miguel, only 13 years old, walked onto the massive America's Got Talent stage. His small frame looked even smaller beneath the blinding spotlights. He wore a plain white shirt, slightly oversized for him, and worn-out slippers that told a story of hardship more clearly than any introduction could. When Terry Crews asked where he was from, Miguel answered softly, "Quezon City, Philippines." His voice cracked with nerves, but there was a certain innocence in his smile. The judges leaned closer, curious. He explained that he used to sing along the busy streets of Manila, sometimes at jeepney stops or near food stalls, just hoping people would toss a few pesos into his box. That little income, he said, helped his mother buy rice and sometimes medicine for his younger sister. The crowd grew quiet. The room that moments ago buzzed with chatter now carried only the sound of his trembling breath. Simon Cowell leaned forward, his sharp eyes studying the boy not with criticism but with curiosity. There was something about Miguel, something fragile, yet unbroken. He looked scared, yes, but also like a boy standing at the edge of a miracle. As the music cues prepared in the background, Miguel gripped the microphone tighter, whispering a small "thank you" before closing his eyes. The judges exchanged a glance, sensing that this wasn't going to be an ordinary audition. This was a child carrying not just a song but the weight of his entire life. The crowd began to clap softly, encouraging him before the first note even left his lips. The theater in Los Angeles became a bridge between two worlds, the bustling streets of Manila and the dream of a boy who had come farther than anyone ever expected. Note of Hotel California. The opening guitar chords of Hotel California filled the theater, and Miguel took a shaky breath. His voice started small, almost timid, like a child whispering secrets to the wind. But within seconds, something magical happened. That fragile tone grew deeper, fuller, and suddenly carried the soul of every hardship he had ever lived through. The lyrics floated out, haunting and beautiful, like a lullaby sung from the heart of Manila itself. People in the crowd began to sit up straighter, their faces changing from polite interest to stunned awe. The camera caught a mother wiping her eyes, her expression mirroring the struggles Miguel had just confessed. Simon Cowell raised his eyebrows almost immediately, his lips forming a slight smile as if to say, "This boy is special." Miguel's voice climbed higher with confidence, echoing off the walls of the theater, making the massive stage feel like a quiet corner of Quezon City where he once sang beneath flickering streetlights. The power of his performance wasn't in perfect technique, but in the honesty of every note. He wasn't just singing Hotel California, he was pouring his life into it. For Miguel, each lyric became a prayer, each chord a step closer to the future he dreamed of. The arena grew silent except for the sound of his voice, as if everyone collectively decided to stop breathing just to listen. Miguel's nerves slowly melted away. His eyes opened, and though tears shimmered in them, they were no longer tears of fear but of release. The young boy who once begged for spare change on Manila's streets now commanded one of the world's biggest stages. And for the first time, he believed, not just hoped, that he belonged there. As Miguel carried the song into its powerful middle, Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, eyes narrowing not in judgment but in awe. He was known for his tough exterior, for rarely giving compliments easily. But something about Miguel's voice shook him. This wasn't a performance polished by vocal coaches or expensive training. This was pure, raw talent. A gift that rose from hardship and survival. At one point, Simon glanced toward the other judges, raising his eyebrows as if silently saying, "Can you believe this?" Heidi clasped her hands tightly together, her eyes wide with amazement. Sophia whispered to Howie, "This doesn't even sound like a child. This is something else." Simon kept his gaze fixed on Miguel, watching every note, every movement. He could see the boy's knuckles white from gripping the microphone, his small shoulders trembling, but his voice soared like it had been waiting years for this exact moment. Simon's lips curled into a rare, proud smile. He tapped his pen lightly against the desk, a silent rhythm to match Miguel's singing. Then, as Miguel hit the most emotional note of the chorus, Simon actually placed his hand on his chest, a gesture so subtle yet powerful, as though Miguel had reached past his defenses and struck something deep inside. This was no longer just a boy singing a famous song. This was a boy proving to the world, and to himself, that dreams can grow even in the poorest soil. When the camera zoomed in, Simon's eyes were glistening. Not quite tears, but close enough that the entire world watching would notice. Verse and standing ovation. By the time Miguel reached the final verse, the theater was utterly transformed. The crowd, which had started politely supportive, was now hanging on to every word. His voice carried strength, and though his hands still trembled, his delivery was fearless. He sang as if this might be the last time he'd ever have the chance. And maybe, in his heart, that's exactly what he believed. When the last powerful note soared through the room, a silence so heavy fell that even the cameras seemed to pause. For one heartbeat, no one moved, no one breathed. Then, as though a spark lit the air, the audience erupted into thunderous applause. People leapt to their feet, cheering, crying, clapping. The camera caught a man in the front row shouting, "Bravo," while others waved their arms in the air like they were at a concert. Heidi pressed her hands against her face, tears streaming down her cheeks. Sophia shook her head, whispering, "Unbelievable," over and over. Howie stood, clapping above his head. And Simon didn't just clap. He looked down at the desk, shaking his head as if words had abandoned him. When he finally looked back up, he wasn't smiling his usual half-smirk. He was smiling with genuine admiration, the kind he rarely gave. Miguel, meanwhile, stood frozen in the middle of the stage, tears streaming down his own face. For years, he had sung on streets where few listened. Now, the entire world was standing for him. It was too much for his young heart to hold, and he dropped his head, sobbing quietly as the applause rained down. This was no longer just an audition, it was a victory. As the applause continued, Simon leaned forward, his voice calm but filled with emotion. "Miguel," he began, "you didn't just sing tonight. You gave us your heart. That wasn't just a performance, that was life. You reminded us why music matters." Miguel looked up through his tears, his lips trembling as he tried to smile. Simon paused, studying him with a softness rarely seen. Then, without another word, Simon pressed the golden buzzer. The sound of the buzzer echoed like thunder, and suddenly, the arena exploded with golden confetti falling from the ceiling. Miguel gasped, his small body trembling, his knees giving way as he fell to the floor. He covered his face with his hands as the confetti rained over him. Terry Crews rushed onto the stage, lifting Miguel into his arms while the audience roared even louder. The judges stood, clapping and cheering, and Simon simply sat back, watching quietly, his eyes shining. For Miguel, this moment was more than television. It was redemption, it was hope, it was proof that a poor boy from Quezon City could stand on the grandest stage in the world and change his destiny with nothing but his voice. The story of a child once singing for coins had become the story of a star whose golden dream had just begun.